Wait, is that blood?
In 1966,
Is that blood
he
that I
decided
see
to
there?
undergo.
What is up, everyone? Ember here today. We got another YouTube request. It's from Amani, and he says, "Could you react to this video?" Then there's a link which it says, "The philosophy of the Unabomber." It's over 50 minutes long. But I think I can watch this entire video. Yeah, so let's get into it.
The last few years have seen great advances in terms of environmental thought and anarchical sentiment. The increasingly apparent impact of industrial society on the climate, as well as the elitist and incompetent process of liberal democracy, has left many in a state of despair, frustration, and rage. The solutions, either too drastic or too naive, rarely catch on.
Why is
What
it
are
so
we to
blurry?
do as we face a world of increasing hopelessness? For one man, the answer was clear. Send bombs through the mail from your cabin in Montana. This is the philosophy of the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. This video is sponsored by Surfshark.
I never heard of that.
Fortunately, these days, our online activity is far from safe. Every site we log into and every video we watch is likely under the creepy gaze of data collectors willing to sell your personal information to the highest bidder. This can feel pretty frustrating, but there is a way out, through Surfshark VPN. Surfshark VPN protects your IP address and uses the same encryption technology as the US government. This
I thought
guarantees
it's
that your
for
personal data will
using
remain for your
better
own
data in
even
your
when
phone.
using public Wi-Fi. It also lets you virtually place your favorite devices anywhere in the world. This allows you to access up to 15 different Netflix libraries. Overall, Surfshark VPN has worked great for me. I've always agreed that the internet should be safe and secure for everyone, and Surfshark is one of the few options out there that makes this a reality. Get Surfshark VPN by entering the promo code Sisyphus for 83% off and 3 extra months for free. Click on the link in the description below.
Sorry, this ad is interrupting me.
Ted was born on May 22, 1942 in Chicago. Born to loving parents, he was nonetheless separated from them for a short period due to a hives outbreak. After his isolation in the hospital, Ted would show little emotion. However, he would also express extreme sympathy for animals who were caged. In high school, Ted demonstrated a profound intellect, especially in the area of mathematics. As one classmate remembers, he was never really seen as a person, as an individual personality. He was always regarded as a walking brain, so to speak. This would eventually lead him to Harvard at the age of 16, where he earned a degree in mathematics and finished with a GPA of 3.12. However, at the same time, Ted was constructing a specific worldview that had become increasingly anti-technology. To put his philosophy to the test, he signed up for a series of psychology studies done on Harvard undergrads. Conducted by the psychologist Henry Murray, these studies were used to research the effects of stress on human belief and generally used interrogation techniques that would appear unethical by today's standards. Subjects were told that they would debate personal philosophy and would submit essays on their beliefs and values. Then individuals acting as other students would come in and verbally abuse the subject, telling them that their ideas were ridiculous and illogical. Some have
What
suggested
ideas?
that these
I don't
studies were
understand.
part of the CIA's MK-Ultra project. Nevertheless, and despite the possible abuse Ted suffered while in Harvard, he argues that the experiences there had no significant effect on the course of his life. After Harvard, Ted enrolled in the University of Michigan, where he specialized in geometric function theory. Unfortunately, this subfield was becoming increasingly less popular during the 60s. Ted then became the youngest assistant professor in the history of Berkeley. Still, his passion for mathematics as a career was waning, as evident by students' reports that Ted was a terrible professor who would never answer questions and simply teach straight from the textbook. Ted would resign in 1969. While he was teaching, Ted had his first documented desire for violence. He began to experience intense sexual fantasies that involved him becoming a female.
Wait, is that blood?
In 1966,
Is that
he
blood that I
decided to
see there?
undergo gender transition. However, while in the waiting room, Ted decided against it and wrote in his journal that he had a deep passion to kill the psychiatrist and everyone else that hates him. Feelings of inadequacy and loneliness appeared to confound at this stage of his life, resulting in a burning hatred for society itself. Ted built a remote cabin outside of Lincoln, Montana, while receiving money from his parents. His initial goal was to become completely self-reliant, and he spent much of his time studying wilderness survival. However, after discovering that a road had been built in an area of the forest he considered sacred, Ted changed his goal to dismantling industrial society. From 1978 to 1995, Ted would go on to kill 3 people and injure 23 others through mailing a series of bombs.
That's very
the bombs
bad.
generally targeted those who he had felt aided the progress of industrial society, such as those who work in the timber industry, genetics, oil, or computer science. The idealism of his actions climaxed when he sent several letters to prominent newspapers, giving them the ultimatum to either publish his manifesto or face further bombings. The newspapers obliged, publishing the more than 30,000-word piece that discusses the evils of technology, the complacency of leftism, and the potential for a new future. Fortunately, the idiosyncratic writing led to his sister-in-law and brother identifying the author as Ted. This led to his eventual capture and sentencing, where he is currently serving 8 life sentences. One of Ted's primary influences is that of the Christian anarchist philosopher Jacques Ellul. The main theme in Ellul's work is the idea that modern technology directly threatens human freedom and religion. Ellul believed that movements that have fueled industrial society, such as materialism, scientism, and economics, are simply substitutes or false idols for God. He argues that these ideologies tend to use and abuse their followers in order to continue the necessity of efficiency. This is identified through Ellul's use of the word technique, which he defines as the totality of methods rationally arrived at and having absolute efficiency for a given stage of development in every field of human activity. Efficiency becomes the unquestionable goal of human existence and, by default, subordinates the natural world. Ellul's major concern is the capacity for this technique to shape the social and psychological makeup of individuals. Firstly, it makes us adapt to technology rather than it adapting to us. Secondly, it shapes our desires around efficiency through a constant need for utility and categorization. This is aided by media and propaganda, which is manipulated by special interest groups and creates an inner control over the individual by a social force, which means that it deprives him of himself. Unlike Ted, however, Ellul does not promote violence as an answer. As he argues, a Christian who chooses violence is sacrificing freedom for necessity. In fact, his definition of anarchy is an absolute rejection of violence, as he sees the nation-state to be the primary source of violence. Ellul advocates for the creation of grassroots institutions, and suggests that a change in perception will help us avoid absolute subordination under technology, specifically through viewing technology as objects or tools, rather than allowing them to shape our desire. Ted's manifesto is similar to Ellul's message, but carries a far more radical solution with it. Notably, the manifesto is aware of its radical tone, accompanied by an annotation that explains that the manifesto contains imprecise and general sweeping statements, and that it should be taken as a crude approximation.
Is that supposed to be like a
It then opens with the Unabomber's own theory of history. He believes that small changes to long-term trends are simply transitory, and that changes large enough to permanently affect a trend can also change society as a whole. However, he suggests the side effects, unwelcome or not, of any large-scale change is entirely unpredictable. Likewise, he argues that new societies cannot be designed, and finally, that people do not choose the form of their own society, a popular rejection of social contract theory. The opening line, "The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race," conveys the sentiment of the entire piece. Ted specifically argues 3 instances in which technology has degraded humanity. Firstly, it has destabilized society through the erosion of freedom. The system requires the regulation of human behavior in order for it to function. But what is freedom according to him? Freedom means being in control, either as an individual or as a member of a small group, of the life and death issues of one's existence: food, clothing, shelter, and defense against whatever threats there may be in one's environment. Freedom means having the power to control the circumstances of one's own life. Secondly, industrial society has created an unfulfilling life for many. People spend their days engaged in what he calls surrogate activities, such as entertainment consumption, political activism, and science. These are all activities that are in the service of technology rather than humanity, according to Ted. Here he also takes a clear aim at leftists, which he defines as socialists, collectivists, feminists, and gays, who he feels have fallen prey to over-socialization and inferiority.
What was I watching?
Specifically, he defines over-socialization as the process by which people are trained to think and to act as a society demands through the experience of guilt. Leftists tend to take part in various activities to alleviate the guilt, such as small-scale reform or advocating for minority groups, without ever considering the serious or drastic measures actually required to solve these issues. The leftist is anti-individualistic, pro-collectivist. He wants society to solve everyone's problems for them, satisfy everyone's needs
Do you really want
take
to?
care of them. He also takes aim at conservatives who he feels hypocritically whine about the decay of traditional values, yet enthusiastically support technological progress and economic growth. Finally, the manifesto argues that technology has increased psychological suffering. As he explains, people have a basic need that he calls the power process, which has the four ingredients of goal, effort, attainment,
What kind
and
of power
autonomy.
process is that?
However, industrial society disrupts this process by making things either too easy, such as accumulating tech and fashion to feel good, as encouraged by ads, or too difficult, such as making it impossible to control modern issues, such as pollution or the invasion of privacy. Consistent failure to attain goals throughout life results in defeatism, low self-esteem, or depression. Kaczynski's solution is to create stress and instability within society until the whole system collapses. He argues that tapping into sub-societies, such as ghettos and criminal organizations, are crucial in doing this, as they threaten the absolute control of the system. He suggests that revolution should be preferred over reform, as reform is always restrained by the fear of painful consequences if changes go too far. But once a revolutionary fever has taken hold of a society, people are willing to undergo unlimited hardships for the sake of their revolution. His idea of a successful revolution is one in which human society is taken to its pre-industrial state, with only small-scale technology such as water wheels. Factories and technological knowledge should be unilaterally destroyed. He believes that despite suffering caused by such a revolution, it is far more preferable than the other alternatives.
That's so bad.
Either the collapse of the
That is
system
so
under
bad.
its own weight due to overconsumption and environmental disaster, or its continued advancement, which simply involves living a long but empty and purposeless life. Some, such as Cynthia Ozick, likens Kaczynski to Dostoevsky's Raskolnikov, a philosophical criminal of exceptional intelligence and humanitarian purpose, driven to commit murder out of an uncompromising idealism. Others suggest that the Unabomber was consumed by the outdated notion of the noble savage, the idea that we can somehow return to the life of the frontierman and enjoy an idyllic natural existence while ignoring the downsides to such a life. Specific critiques have also been launched against the manifesto. Kaczynski entirely avoids discussing the seemingly innocent positives of technology, such as reading glasses, music recordings, and sewers that appear to improve human existence and give some quality to life. Likewise, his argument that modern man has no ability to control pollution and other things outside of his control doesn't really hold up in comparison to the primitive man, who would likewise have many things outside of his control, such as disease and basic security. Ted counters this by stating that the primitive man can handle these issues stoically, but it is not entirely clear as to why the modern man can't also accept the problems out of their control stoically. It appears that Ted has an absolutist and perfectionist position here, in which anything considered technological is evil and everything natural is good. Likewise, Ted believes that a coordinated universal shutdown of progress is the only solution. However, this seems incredibly idealistic, especially in contrast to his pessimistic view of humanity. If one country decides to continue progressing in technology, they could quickly dominate the world. Ted appears unwilling to accept the possibility that technological progress is a Pandora's box we simply cannot close. Finally, if Ted truly values autonomy and the freedom of choice, then modern society still allowed him to quit a comfortable academic position and live in the woods. Where industrial society allows varying lifestyles of comfort and freedom, a pre-industrial state may fail to offer a life of security if desired. Perhaps the greatest critique, however, is found in the work of Jacques Ellul, one of Ted's greatest influences. Ted felt it absolutely necessary to kill for the efficiency of his message, but Ellul denounces violence in pursuit of the truth, as doing so simply falls into the same heartless utility that Ted had rejected so fervently. Kaczynski's sadistic and sociopathic disregard for the lives of innocent people should make anyone wary of his idealism. Despite his coherent and prophetic critique of late-stage capitalism, we should not mistake his personal anger towards the system, which evidently destroyed his soul through isolation and experimentation, as worthy philosophical discourse.
Oh my god. That video was so long. Sorry, I was a little bit impatient. I'm sorry. And I also wasn't talking much, so I feel sorry for that. But I'd like to thank you everyone for watching this video. If you guys are new here, check out my TikTok and Instagram. Link in the description below. And I'll see you in the next YouTube video.